Hey, this is Seagrove, and we are back after a brief disruption. We're going to be talking about the Daytona Expanded Regional coming up. I'm going to let these young men introduce themselves. Rahul, why don't you start?
Hey guys, I'm Rahul. I've been playing for a while now. I have a beard now. That's about it.
It looks good. Rukan, go ahead.
Hey guys, I'm Rukan. I've played for a year and a half now. Most of my good finishes are with Malamar, and I'm sticking with it just for fun, as long as I can, and I'm having a good time.
I think it's more than just for fun right now. It seems pretty well positioned.
In expanded? What?
Oh, not expanded. Okay.
Okay.
Might be. Arlo, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Arlo. I've been playing for 3 years, 2 years competitively, and I like Zoroark yet.
It's pretty good. Well, that seems like a decent place to start. So, if we look at last tournament results, we saw a few Zoroark Garbodors do well. We saw Archie's toys do well. We saw there's a Shocklock, I think, in top 8, and then Garb won it all. Am I forgetting anything big? I think that's about it.
Yeah, those were like the main top 8.
Yep.
Cool. So, what is Arlo? We'll start with you. What is your opinion on Zoroark in the current meta? Is Zoroark still the best Zoroark variant, and how is that best variant positioned? Arlo.
I think Zoroark is still like pretty well positioned. Sorry, my Discord's lagging.
Okay. I think mine might be too. So, oh, nice.
Sorry, my Discord lagged out.
Okay. Zoroark, how's it going?
I still think it's pretty well positioned. It's like around the same meta as was Greensboro. Like I didn't have a hard time at all against anything besides the Mirror and Garb. Like I still feel like it's favored against Archie's and the one prize decks like Hitmonchan. I hit a couple of those. I still feel like my list was definitely not optimal as I didn't own a dowsing machine, but it ended up working out because Comp Surge got me a lot of brick hands. So that could adding a Comp Surge into the deck would definitely help like the Guard matchup, as you can reuse like Field Blowers or Special Charge or something like that.
A dowsing machine. Yeah. Okay. Rahul, what's your opinion on Zoroark and its best current form?
I think Zoroark is still one of the strongest decks in Expanded. I think it's one of the big two. I just wrote an article about it today. I think Zoroark Garb has always been really good, and Zoroark in general has been always really good. And now that you've lost almost all the degenerate cards that go along with it, I think it's actually finally in a place where it needs to have a partner like Garbodor to retain its advantage.
Okay.
And if you don't have that, you're kind of on the back end. And the deck is like, it's not like a cookie cutter 60 by any means. Like there was like 4 or 5 that made day 2, and almost every single one in Greensboro had like a different varying set of techs, like foul play, laser, counter catcher. Like you can pretty much play all these cards that just make the deck a little bit better in certain matchups. Right. So I think it's a very strong deck.
Rukan, what are your thoughts on Zoroark? Is Zoroark Garb the king right now in terms of the Zoroark variants?
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. Just speaking to random people, I feel like it's probably one of the least respected of the top archetypes in terms of when people like build decks. Like I more often see people just take an L to Zoroark Garb than other decks for some reason. I don't know the logic behind that. It's just what I've observed, and you can always build it to like deal with almost anything. So, and it's been like it's earned the most points per best of 3 for like 3 expanded regionals in a row now. So,
right. Okay, so what we saw win last time was Drampa Garb. It was a bit different than old Drampa Garb lists. Rahul, can you talk to us about some of the changes and its position in the meta?
I think Andrew Martin played like a pretty cool deck, and I think we saw Blaine Hill play a very similar list over in Dallas, and people kind of like didn't talk about it. It didn't garner as much hype as it should have, I think, because of the gap we had in between the expanded regionals and Pika's deck coming out, and like people being more afraid of that. But he played that really cool Sigilyph card. and so did Blaine. Blaine played 2 actually, and Andrew played 1. And Sigilyph was like really good against things like Archies and Pikazak, and it's really annoying. I think it gave Drampagarb that little bit of an edge to come back into the meta. And besides that, I mean, Drampagarb has always been good, right? You just Garbotoxin parallel and your opponent has to find a way to deal with that. And
Right.
I was talking to Sam Chen earlier today, and he's like, I haven't played Expanded in a while, but this feels like I'm playing 2017 all over again.
Yeah. Rukan, what are your thoughts on Sigilyph in the deck? Is it really that good? We saw the people who were using it say things like, "Oh, it's good because people don't know what it does."
I do feel like it was. I think Sigilyph is good,
Okay.
but I also do think its success at the last event was kind of due to everyone saying that if you're not going to counter something, don't counter Archiestoise in all the MetaForecast videos. And then a lot of people played Archiestoise, and it turns out Drampagarb's just bodies Archiestoise or something like that.
Right.
So I thought it was like a great meta pick. I think people are still going to be a bit more prepared for it, and there's going to be a few more like hard counter decks to it. But I think the deck's still good. I just don't think it's as well positioned. And I think Sigilyph is still a very good and relevant card.
Yeah. Cool. Arlo, what do you think about Archiestoise?
I still feel like Archiestoise is still very high tier just because of the crazy play like we saw Azul do in his top 8 match of just Towering Splash wipe the whole board. That's always something that's going to be very appealing to people, just like crazy expanded plays like that you can't usually do in standard format decks. And also just like the raw potential the deck can have, because you can fit so many different attackers. Like we saw Eevee, Snorlax, Onix, alongside all the water type Pokemon you can play in it. It's just like a very versatile way you can build the deck, and I feel like that's going to be like drawn attentive to when people are testing for the event.
Right. Rahul, do you have anything to add about Archiestoise in terms of the deck itself, and in terms of is it a good choice for people who are not exactly sure what to play, or does it take a lot of practice? What do you think about that?
I think it's probably the safest play, because the deck has no real hard answer, and it can overwhelm your opponents in a couple of turns. It pretty much just vomits energy onto the board and commands a response. And if your deck doesn't have the response in the first couple of turns, even if your deck is built to deal with Archies, if you can't find those cards in like the first 2 turns, the game could just be over. So I think it's one of those decks where like it demands respect in the expanded format, and I think that's why everyone is like trying to find a way to deal with it. So I think it's still a safe play.
How hard is it to play?
It's not terribly difficult. It's like sometimes like the cards are just like in your hands and you have to play it the way like your hand just plays itself sometimes, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
And then sometimes it's like you have to be able to kind of see the lines and get that turn 1 like Archies, and once that's up, it's kind of like it's free floating from there. And the fact that the DDG crew all played that 1 Marshadow let loose was a little bit like smart on their part, because usually that slots an N, and having the Marshadow plus treasures allows you to get a second chance if your hand doesn't comply the first time around. And 4 cards is a lot easier to pull it off with than
right.
The initial 6 you have.
Yeah. So sequencing seems pretty important there.
If you can manage to master the sequencing down, and like, because you have to be able to do it, and you got to be able to do it quick, because Archie's turns take a while sometimes. So if you kind of mess up even 1 piece, you just lose the game sometimes.
Yeah. Rukan, thoughts on Archies?
So I've been running the Pokemon Fight Club, and Drampagarb and Archiestoise actually performed the worst in the first week. And I think it's because there's a lot more people prepared for it and trying to counter it. Those 2 decks, just like immediately coming off of that regional. And the second thing is I think a lot of people aren't that familiar with some of the harder decisions you have to make, because Archiestoise, like, sometimes it's very straightforward, but you're going to have games where your hands are really, really awkward, and then you need to kind of figure out how to deal with that, and that can be a little bit unintuitive. And then Drampagarb is just, I feel like, is a deck that a lot of people aren't too familiar with, so when people like tried it out in the first week of like Fight Club, it just didn't pan out for them because they were just not sure how to play the deck quite yet.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's like because the deck was bad or anything like that, but I do think those 2 decks they're not ideal. I would probably recommend PikaRom over Archiestoise if you don't have too much time to practice.
Okay. How is PikaRom in this meta?
Me?
Yeah.
I think it's in a pretty decent position. It's got a reasonable matchup against Archie Stoice. It's got a reasonable matchup against Celebi Venusaur. And you can, tweak your counts a bit to set up better numbers against, like, Garb, or, like, have an answer to Sigilyph, or more, like a second Silent Lab or Raikou or something. Quantities are a bit more known. Plus, I think Hitmonchan is on the decline a little. Like, I don't think you definitely have any right to beat Hitmonchan, but, like, Salazzle getting hyped recently kind of throws a wrench in Hitmonchan's plans. I haven't seen people playtesting Hitmonchan do that well anymore, and the deck just seems to be fading, which I think is good for PikaRom overall.
Arlen, what do you think about Cellusaur and PikaRom and Expanded?
I think PikaRom is also like one of those decks that can just kind of explode on the board, kind of like Archie's does. Like, I've play tested against the deck when preparing for Greensboro, and a couple of my friends just got like turn 1, 300 damage and knock out my Whale and my Blastoise, so it can always do stuff like that. And I feel like that's one of those raw power decks in the expanded format where you just kind of like throw energy under the board and expect your opponent to have a big response. It's kind of like Archie's, except it's lightning Pokemon. Yeah. Just kind of expect your opponent to have a response. And I think Cellusaur can also, like, it's not like a bad deck. Like, we saw Rahul make day 2 with it, which was really cool.
Hey.
And it has like a decent Zoroark matchup and like things that poke type of matchup, like Hitmonchan. And obviously it has the grass weakness on Archie's. But if PikaRom comes like more playable into the expanded format, I don't think it would be the best play, as it's really hard for Cellusaur to constantly keep up with PikaRom's pressure.
Rahul, I wanted to ask you about Cellusaur and PikaRom. Actually, I saw you light up when someone mentioned PikaRom. What do you think about these?
So I guess I'll start with PikaRom. If the tournament was tomorrow, which it's really close to tomorrow, I would play PikaRom because I think it is aggressive, it is fast, it does what it needs to do best. It loses to the stuff it's supposed to lose to. It beats the stuff it's supposed to beat. Yeah, that's all I got. I mean, it does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And as far as Cellusaur goes, my thought process behind playing it for Greensboro was that I had been, tinkering with it on ladder a little bit, and like in my mind, I'm like, I'm never gonna play this deck. Am I? Like, I'm not gonna play this deck. And so like I just kept playing it and changing cards, and I think I played like 50 to 60 games, and I like changed a card like every other game pretty much. And it eventually got to the point where I was like, there's no way I'm playing this deck. So I get to the event and I'm playing against Justin Bakari, and he's playing Zoroark Garbodor, and he's like, if you can like convince me that this matchup is like good for Cellusaur, I'll play it. I think I lost like 4 of the first like 5 games immediately, and then I realized immediately like some of the cards in this deck were just like bad that I had. Okay. Like I had red cards and like potions and stuff, and I was like, these cards suck. And I put in Steven's Resolve and the Sudowoodo, and then my matchup improved considerably against Zoroark, because if Zoroark gets the Garbotoxin out, I win, and if they don't get the Garbotoxin out, I have Pseudo.
Right.
So it's like a double-edged sword for the Zoroark matchup, and I think Cellusaur is very good at being like a green Groudon. And it beats the matchups it's supposed to beat. Like, it deals with Archie's. I think it's still a little bit close because of the Kingdra, but it is favored, and you do smack the crap out of Hitmonchan. Like, it's not close, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Despite, like, John Ang telling me that it's a close matchup, it is not. I played against a Buzzwole in day 2, like a Buzzwole fighting stuff deck, and I don't think it took a single prize against me. PikaRom is really bad. Rayquaza is really bad. I found myself face to face with 4 of those bad boys in Greensboro. But you do beat 2 of the big 3 in my opinion, and so I think it's a play that is going to garner some popularity going into this weekend. And personally, I'm not going to say I wouldn't play it, because I have been testing out this list with less of the lilies that I played and more Bill's analysis and the mixed herbs that I was a little bit inspired from Standard from, and I don't know if it's good or not, but it is something I'm still testing. But I think it's a known quantity now, and I mean, if you know it's there, you kind of know how to play against it now, so people are getting practice against it.
Rukan, I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on Chalk Lock.
Oh God. I think it's reasonable. There's a few decks in the format that just don't really beat it, but at the end of the day, like, you have trouble with Zoroark, right? Like, I've heard people talking about it, and that's one of the decks I'm referencing when I say, like, when I talk to other people, sometimes they're building decks that don't really respect Zoroark very much. Shock Block's, like, one of those decks, right? I feel like Zoroark's never going to not be a good play, and Shock Lock might get you into day 2, but I don't know if it's going to get you deep into day 2 unless you get very, very lucky with matchups.
Right.
Yeah, and I played against Jonathan in top 8, and I think both games I just got out Garbotoxin, and this game was just over from there, as he wasn't able to like complete out his strategy. I was just taking knockouts, and he couldn't be able to like stop it.
Yeah. Arlo, pick one of these 3: Bees, Night March, Lost March. You have to play one. Which one are you playing, and why?
I definitely like Vespiquen over all of those, just because I think my friend Katron, he made like this really cool like variate deck. Like he played like the 2/2 Alolan Raticate Pokemon to deal with the Trevenant matchup. I feel like Vespiquen as a deck has to play a lot more Pokemon in order to reach the numbers it needs, and because of that, it can fit in a lot more text for more matchups. Yeah. So that's why I would like it.
I saw Rukan not in agreement to Vespiquen and Rahul's, so I think we're all here.
I'm biased. My first expanded deck was one of Rahul's lists, and I've been sold on Vespiquen ever since I played it.
It's insane. I don't know what else to say.
So, Rahul, as the bee, are you playing it?
I will not be playing it for this weekend. I think there's unfortunately too much collateral still from Toronto. I did play it in Toronto myself, and I felt like that metagame was like near perfect for single prize attackers, except for like the 16 Trevenants that showed up for the tournament. I managed to find I played against 3, and I did almost beat 1. I played against Chris Sayakala, and I had what I consider to be the most perfect start ever, games 1 and 2, getting like 15 Pokemon in the discard, paralleling all the dead weight away, having like 3 attackers out, all my DCEs, like a 15 card deck maybe, and like guaranteeing pretty much a knockout every turn. And then I did one game 1 off the back of that, and game 2 I missed an energy to lose, so happens. And then game 3, Trev. But I think the deck is still like really good, and I did see the list that Katron and them played. I'm not the biggest fan of it because in my experience with Vespiquen, the essence of the deck should be single prize attackers. You got to force your opponent to take all 6 prizes. And so something like Eradicate or like all these other like cute techs, sure they're good against Trevenant, but I've never cared about Trevenant. It's like it's an L that I'm willing to take because it's almost always one of the lesser represented decks. So I've always like my lists have like very strangely gone back to being like 2016, 2015, like just 4/4 Bs, 4/4 Flareon, and consistency cards. And I think the list I posted today had like 2 Marshadow Let Loose in it, and I think I might even go to a 3rd if I was going to play it, just because it's a shuffle draw that lets you dig to get more cards, and then you can just parallel it away. And then like worst case, it's just a 1-prizer that sits on your bench, and you're like, it's not a Lele, it's not a Shaman, so it's like a pseudo Shaman, and like nothing. I guess Zoroark is a little annoying for that, but like if it's a Shaman, if it's a Marshadow, it doesn't change anything in your hand. So,
if you look at Greninja, I think is what you were saying, Rukan. You had an issue with people playing Greninja.
Greninja
is it really that bad? Is it not that one?
I mean, only like a total of 4 people brought it in the last 2 expanded regionals, and I think there's a good reason that only 4 people total in 2 regionals brought it.
Did it day 2?
No, of course not.
Sad.
You don't really beat Archie Soyce, you don't really beat PikaRom, you don't really beat Salazzle, and there's just too many of the new cards are just too fast for you.
Yeah. Does Trevenant beat any of those?
I've not played that matchup.
Trevenant has a hard time against Archies and PikaRom.
And Salazzle.
Okay.
Yeah. My Salazzle list was built entirely with the notion of clapping Trevenant.
Yeah.
I played the scoop up block mine for that matchup too.
Oh, nice. Trevenant can beat Archies, but I'd say it's 50-50 at best. Okay, cool. So, well, it depends on text. But anyways, so then let's talk about general thoughts. First, Rukan, with your Fight Club, are there any surprising trends that you notice?
I was mostly surprised that Archie Slice and Trampagarb did so poorly. Like Zorogarb did by far the best of all the old decks. I think it was just because of familiarity. I wouldn't draw too many conclusions based on Fight Club. If you actually, if you look at the results, Malamar did better than Zorogarb, which should never happen. It's just a matter of familiarity. I just so happens that I'm more familiar with expanded Malamar than everyone else is with their respective decks. I think it's just is what it is. I don't. It's a place to test. It's not a place to get matchup results.
Sure. Okay, so if you had to pick one deck to beat 100%, like I will not lose to this deck, no matter what I play, what would that be, Rahul?
Salazzle.
Okay.
I'm not losing to my own creation.
Arlo.
I think I always like to be able to beat Archie's Toys, as it's the most popular pick, and I really hate losing to that deck because at Dallas I played against 3 of them, and all 3 times games, I think 1 in 3, I just got my entire board wiped by Towering Splash, and that was not fun. So I always try to intend to make sure I just destroy that matchup.
Rukan.
I don't have a preference on like what deck I don't beat or what decks I absolutely need to beat. I think
what's
it's okay to just popular? Take on. What's going to be the most popular?
Yeah, sorry I interrupted you. If you want to finish that thought.
I feel like it's still going to be Zorogarb.
Okay.
But if I would take a loss, I would probably take a loss to Archie's Toys, just because I think that and Trampagarb have the most attention from the rest of the meta. So I feel like I'd have the most herd immunity. And I think Trampagarb's just a deck that a lot of people don't like to play or don't have as much experience playing. So I'd be okay with those 2 decks, just because they just topped the last regional.
Rahul, what do you think is going to be the most popular deck?
Archie's Toys. I think it's the deck that most players are going to gravitate to. It's been like in the top 3 for the past since it's pretty much this whole season, since like weekend 1 where like everyone didn't really know how to build a list, and then I think somebody top 4'd and I think Sam got 9th or 10th or something like that.
Yeah.
And then everybody kind of was like, "Oh, this deck is good," and it's been there ever since. Like it's been that deck where like people can pick up and they play it and they're like, "Why would I not play this deck?"
Arlo, what's the best deck in the format?
I think it's still Archie's. I kind of agree with Rahul. Just for all the same reasons. Like it's like a fan favorite also, just because it's been in the game for so long. And it's attaching a lot of energies. If you're like not a semi-casual player, you could say it's also like a lot of fun in order to play the deck.
Yeah.
It's also on the amount of success we've seen it have in like every single regional. Just shows off the potential power the deck has.
Rukan, what's the best deck you won't be playing?
The best deck I won't be playing, probably Archie's Toys. I feel like its performance up until now was kind of the result of the community not really having like precedent on how to counter it effectively, right? And I think the last event, what was it, Greensboro? I think the last event kind of turns that on its head, because we saw like Trampagarb come out and we saw Salazzle make day 2. So we have a few archetypes that are like now like proven archetypes that beat Archie's Toys. Whereas when you look at the meta forecast leading up to Greensboro, people were like, "Oh, just take a loss to Archie's Toys because it's inconsistent. Sometimes it can brick," and like they just didn't really have a clear and predefined answer, and they only had like a little bit of time to prepare for that event. And I think that's a little bit different for Daytona.
Right. Rahul, what's the best deck you won't play? Like,
I think Zoroark.
Okay.
I think while it's like one of the most powerful decks by far, I've never found myself enjoying expanded Zoroark.
Yeah.
It's just not fun for me. I always feel like
I
have a target on my back when I play Zoroark and expanded. And besides like the first couple tournaments where like you had all these degenerate cards, now it's like the deck is very fair, and I don't like that. And like in expanded, if your deck doesn't feel like you're cheating, I don't think you're doing it right. And so like the fact that Zoroark is like one of the most fair decks right now, like just does not want me to like. I don't want to play it.
Right. Rahul, give me some shout outs.
All right. Shout out to you again for having me. Shout out to Team ARG. We have a new card game coming out, Argent Saga. Don't ask me any questions about it. I have no idea what it is. I will be getting a demo deck sometime in June though, and then I can tell you more about it. And then
Can you play that online?
I have no clue.
Okay.
I think we're still in like the rollout phase of it.
Okay.
I asked Jim if we're getting demo decks for players, and he said like, I'll send you guys something in June so we can kind of like play it at tournaments and kind of get a feel for it. Kind of like how Keyforge is getting that natural hype.
Right.
And then I guess shout out to TC Evolutions for some awesome dice, and yeah, shout out to Yellow Decks for being really good.
Cool. Rukan.
Shout out Poke Beach, always like the greatest source of future card reveals and all that. And shout out to PokeStats. We're doing some pretty cool work there. And then shout out to Pokemon Fight Club, where once a day, every weekday, we get a few people together and we play test for the next whatever the next event is, which is expanded right now. So if you want to get a few games in, check out the Facebook group. Just message me if you need an invite, if you don't know where to find it or something.
Arlo.
Shout out to my team and sponsor, the Next Level Games, just newly added after Greensboro, and also shout out to all the people I test with, and like Alec, Jake, Ben, and Noah. They're all really cool to hang out with.
Awesome. All right, thank you guys so much for your time. Good luck to everybody going to Daytona, and get yourself an invite. Peace out. Shout out to my patrons, Caleb Vance, Dan Nelson, PokeStats. Thank you guys so much. And Alex Haney and Daniel. Appreciate it a lot. Steve, Enrico, Jess Swinson, Stefan Ivanov, Cecil, Gabe, Will, and Brian. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel, supporting me, and helping me continue to produce content, which I believe is beneficial for people who are watching. Thanks again. Peace out.